we are now going on to the depressing stuff. We have updates in the Palestinian-Israeli war. And I also want to talk about some internal Israeli politics that's going on that is really important for us to understand the home front of the war in Israel. So first, I want to talk about where we are. So the war has been going on for 3 months. We have 20,000 dead in Gaza, and 1.1 million people are currently in danger of starvation. People are so hungry that they are eating food off of the ground that is being thrown off of the trucks, because these aid trucks that do end up getting into Gaza, that are becoming less and less as time goes on, as it becomes more and more difficult to get humanitarian aid to the people who need it, these trucks are getting ravaged by starving people. And the truckers and the UN officials who are helping distribute the aid are throwing the food onto the ground while people are scavenging it, trying to get as much food as they can for their family. Now, Israel is actually in the middle of scaling back their offensive because of economic troubles that they're having at home. Israel is having a shortage of working-aged men, working-aged women, and so this is causing their economy to go into a bit of a slump and recession. So they're pulling back military men and women from the front to get them back to work. Military leaders are suggesting that this is not because of a lack of will or because of a lack of objective. I will take issue with that lack of objective thing. I do think it's a change in objective, and I'll talk about that later. But Israel is still very committed to fighting Hamas to the end. And this scale back, while is probably good for the Palestinian people in the short term, will be just a delay until the Israelis get more of a focus and a better economic situation at home.
It's a blip, nothing more.
Yeah, it's a blip. Yeah. We have Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, who are two high-ranking U.S. intelligence officials, Blinken being the Secretary of State, are pleading with the Israelis to change their focus. They are begging them to do more targeted strikes and change the focus of the war. They are citing the fact that Israel is losing goodwill with the majority of the Western world, and it's making it hard for the U.S. government to sell giving weapons to the Israelis at home, because obviously President Biden is facing flack for funding the onslaught of, honestly, pretty blatant attacks on civilians. Yeah. And it's on purpose. And I'll talk about that in a second.
Did you happen to see the Times article that came out, I think like 3 days ago, that was an in-depth look at what has been going on behind the scenes in the Biden administration on this? Okay. Because there was a lot in there, but a clear takeaway is that no matter what the members of his administration will want or push for, Biden is not budging on his support.
No.
Right? Like, at all.
That's why he's secretly selling weapons to Israel through a backdoor channel without approval from Congress.
Yeah. I mean, not secretly.
No, not secretly. It's we know it's happening, but he's doing it without approval from Congress.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I don't know. That hurts me. And I part of what I got from it too is like Blinken and Sullivan, who are totally on the front lines of all of this, these discussions with Israel, are they're hamstrung, or they have no leverage.
None.
Right?
Because Biden will always give them what they want, to be honest.
Yeah. And it's a terror. Like, I hate it.
I hate it.
I hate it.
This is the one area where Joe Biden is just terrible.
Yeah.
Just terrible. It's just terrible because he had such a good, from my perspective, a good start on foreign policy. His pullout of Afghanistan was always going to be messy. But the fact that he was able to do it and get us out of one of the longest wars in American history, and cut drone strikes down by, I'm talking like 98% less drone strikes than what Trump does.
Yeah,
it's a massive achievement. Why is this the one hill that he's willing to die on? And it makes no sense to me. And Israel is only spreading the pain further and further and more frequent and more frequent. Israel has currently been using 2,000-pound bombs on the city of Rafah and the area around Rafah. Rafah is notable because it's on the border with Egypt, and it's also notable because that's where Israel told all the civilians to go. They told the civilians to head south and head to the city of Rafah. Well, the New York Times has actually mapped out these bombs and the sites of the bombs droppings and have confirmed that Israel has been targeting regions of regions of Gaza that Israel had previously designated as safe for civilians. These 2,000-pound bombs are not supposed to be used on civilian centers. The U.S. has actually sworn off of doing so. If the United States, the country that is still okay with using cluster bombs, is saying that this is too much to use against civilians, you start using them, you lost the plot.
Yeah, our credibility has evaporated.
Absolutely evaporated. And now Israel is dropping these bombs that is not designed for civilian targeting on some of the most densely civilian populated areas in the world.
Yeah.
We're talking about areas that are more densely populated than Paris are being hit with 2,000-pound munitions.
Yeah.
Buildings just being gone, craters being left in its wake, and people dying for no good reason.
Well, I'm going to add a piece of context that also comes from this article that's going to make this a little bit more nuanced.
Okay.
According to Israel and IDF forces, the tunnels that they have found, the tunnel networks underneath Gaza that Hamas hides out in, are apparently much more extensive than was even revealed. And apparently they're equivalent to like multi-story buildings underground. And part of Israel's argument is the only way you can do any damage to those are with massive airstrikes, massive bombing. So this isn't to say that I condone it, because I think at that point, your cost-benefit analysis says the cost, like no matter what the benefit, the cost of what we're doing to these people is too much. Mm-hmm. But that's where they're coming from.
Yeah, and I understand that. I understand that militarily,
yeah,
this is the best way to take out Hamas.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. Mm-hmm. If you want to destroy their tunnel networks, even if their tunnel network is sitting on, a residential building holding 100 people, the best military avenue is to, bomb that building.
Yeah.
And I get it.
And I think, I mean, from Israel's perspective, it's probably like, I don't care. I just think they don't care at all about killing all of these people. Mm-hmm. All they care about is eliminating Hamas, protecting Israelis, and as long as they do that, they will go through as many Gazan civilians as they feel they have to.
Yeah, and I want to say I want to say negative things about Hamas all the time, but I'll say this negative thing about Hamas. Hamas utilizing these tunnel networks that they know are in civilian areas should be considered a war crime in and of itself.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because they're using humans as human shields, which is not something you're really allowed to do. Mm-mm. And what makes it difficult is what's technically a civilian versus military target is if the country doing the bombing can prove that civilian infrastructure is being utilized for military purposes, that building no longer becomes a civilian building. Mm-hmm. It is no longer civilian infrastructure, and that country now has full right to go and bomb that building if they can prove that things are being held in it, on it, around it, near it, utilized by the enemy.
And Hamas does that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes it really, really difficult because it would actually be somewhat of a hard sell if you can prove that these tunnels are underneath these buildings, which I think they have proven to a good extent.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. It makes it hard because you see 20,000 dead and you like.
The civilian casualty rate is way higher here than it was in Ukraine. And is in Ukraine.
Oh my God, yeah. I don't think 20,000 civilians have died in Ukraine yet.
I don't think so either.
So, it's just so, I find my mind so wanting to get to some level of black and white, right? I want to be at different points in this conflict, you just want to be able to say the Israelis are totally bad, but then it's like, okay, Hamas is constantly using people as human shields. Mm-hmm. They're putting all of their military equipment in hospitals, schools, other civilian buildings. And so international law says that now it's okay to attack those, right? But they've also killed 20,000 civilians.
It made 1.1 million people on the edge of starvation.
Yeah, like
God, to what point, man? To what point are we going to need a different type of settlement here? And now we have the radicals on both sides of the conflict not wanting a settlement. They don't want one.
Yeah,
the radicals on both sides of this conflict, the right wing in Israel, the Islamic extremists in Gaza, no one wants peace.
Yeah,
both of them want conquering, extermination of the other side.
One thing I will say to Biden's credit, at least according to that Times article I read, is that Netanyahu I mean, Netanyahu is probably saying this for political reasons, but he was saying that he is the only thing standing in front of Biden's two-state solution. So one thing that we know is Biden has been pushing for a two-state solution.
Yeah,
he
forever.
said that publicly.
I mean, he said that since the 70s.
Yes, but their words, right, and his actions are preventing it actively.
Actively.
So
Actively.